Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Bold Explorer live reading. Hello, welcome to you on the, what are we today? The 9th of November 2020. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, pretty much. A wet afternoon down here in Worthing. Bit of a panicky day today, getting various things done. But lovely to be back and reading for you. And I hope it's all going to go well. Hello to everybody out there. Whilst you're all arriving, let me just say that 2 books have arrived for me. And one book, I'm ashamed to say, I can't remember who it was who said they were sending it. So if it's you, please own up and don't all say, I'm Spartacus. So the first one is another one by Tickner Edwards called Neighbourhood. It's a beautiful book. And it all takes place it came from Abe Books, and I forget who it was. There was a number of people who have been talking about books with me, and there's no note, so I forgot who it was. But it's a beautiful book about. Hang on, I'm just trying to find a year's life in and about an English village by Tickner Edwards, author of The Law of the Honeybees, and of course the one we're reading, Lift Luck, and it looks like a beautiful one, and it takes place in and around Winterbourne, which is in Sussex. It says here, the village lies just where the Arun River breaks the green rampart of the Sussex Downs. To the west, the lowest cottage dwindle almost to the water's brink. Northward and eastward, the highest buildings stand afar off, clear-cut against the blue wall of the sky, while in between, filling the deep, steep coombe, church and inn, and every kind of dwelling-house, little or big, huddled together under their thatch and old red tiles, with the village green in their midst, and a thread of white road rippling through them all, and up the steep coombe side till it is lost in the sunny waste of the hills. So that's it. I was sending you Neighbourhood. Sean, I thought I had at the back of my head it was you, but I didn't want to say in case I offended somebody else. Thank you so much. It's arrived. It has arrived. So it looks like a lovely book. So that's one of them. So thank you very much. That does look very interesting, and we can read that and follow in the footsteps of. The other book that arrived is from Justin Jones, and it's called On Southern English Roads, and it's a beautiful old book. This one, as you can see, look at the way it is cut, or guillotined, or not guillotined in the old-fashioned way, with these very rough. I think it's something like 1889, this book. 1896, I beg your pardon, it says here. And it's another story about travelling on the southern roads. And I thought this might be a good one for the next read. I do want to read some more of Walter Wilkinson. And also, it would be great to read Neighbourhood. Thank you, Sean, so much. I will send you an email. So they would be good. So just looking forward to more, different books. This written at the turn of the century, right, just before. So that would be really nice. And it does look like it's got some interesting plates. When I say plates, well, actually, maybe that's just that one. Oh, there are a few. These line drawings. Where did I just saw it flick by? Of course, now here we go. A moated home, Groombridge Place. I don't know if you can see that. Hang on, probably the best way is on this. I don't want to ruin the book before I've started, but look at that. Doesn't that look lovely? If it will stay in focus, that is. So. Thank you very much, Justine Jones. I read a tiny bit. I haven't had much chance. We've been out filming, had a few issues with cameras and gimbals again. I had a bit of a strop. Poor old Julia was subjected to the Vobes having a hissy fit, and I nearly threw the gimbal and the camera on a tombstone very hard because I was absolutely catatonic with rage. 3 days of issues and struggling to get videos done. Anyway, you don't want to know about that really. And this goes on English roads from Somerset, Wiltshire, Dorset, Hants and Sussex in very much the same vein as what we're reading at the moment with Lift Luck on Southern Roads. So, and we will get on with that in a moment. Anyway, let's just check everybody is all in and correct. I've got a cup of tea this afternoon. So, a good afternoon to Turbo Stream, to Billabong O'Neill, to Justin Jones, to Philip Hammond and Mary. I'm not wearing one of your jumpers today, Mary. I ought to because it's cold enough. I put my jacket on. Ed Loud, good afternoon to you. Sean James Cameron, give us a lift. Audrey Forbes Hamilton, lovely to see you there. It's dark and it feels like the evening. You're absolutely right. It's pretty horrible now. The light has disappeared. Andrew Norris, I always like to give a thumbs up before we start. I'm a visionary and I know it's going to be good. Thank you very much, Andrew. And Andrew, thank you for your message earlier. I will get back to you. I've been back and I've edited tomorrow's video and it's just been head down, get on with it. And emails have come in and I've had to ignore everything and just crack on. We've got Vobe shows every day this week as well, just to compound the work because of the lockdown. So I'm a bit sort of like at the moment. John Morris, lovely to see you. Turbo Stream, hello to you. Been a right miserable day in the Shire today. Sorry about that. Sean James, dry in London. Thank God for that. And hello, everybody, says Laura. Days of Yore, good afternoon. Mark Donny McLeod. John F., good afternoon to you. Linda Kane. Yes, a really foul afternoon. Should have enough books to build your own farmhouse, says Sean. It's getting that way. Certainly great insulation against the cold. Chickens and turkeys, says Mark Donny McLeod. Edward Moulding, good afternoon to you. Michael White, afternoon. And Booyakashara. I know I've pronounced that wrong, but good afternoon to you. So, and anybody, if I've missed you, I do apologise. Let's crack on. We are, what are we? We're about halfway. We are halfway through this book, and we left ourselves halfway through a chapter, if you remember. Time was ticking on. I can't remember exactly where we were. This was last week now, wasn't it? Just trying to remember what happened. Can you remember? Something to do with a caravan, is that right? Recantation, a bargain with a gypsy. Oh, he was on a gypsy caravan, if I remember rightly. Yes, he perched in the doorway of the caravan and he watched various things. So I'm going to start here. I hope this isn't too much of a backtrack of where we were. Anyway, lovely to see. Oh, Diana Rolfe, nice to see you. Nigel Sadler, hello to you. Grand. Voyaging steadily through these lonely Wiltshire lanes to the merry tune of jangling saucepans, I seem now to get an inkling of what character really is in nature, if not art. There would be, surely, no scene nor any work of man without it, if all things came to their maturity, guided only by pristine conditions and unwrapped by human intellectual meddling. If modern thoroughfares follow the old winding tracks, if all vegetation were left to grow or decay where or how circumstances impelled it, if, in all his building and contriving, man worked on the old plan of his forefathers and allowed aboriginal institutions to dictate the placing and fashioning of every stick and stone, then surely the whole face of the earth would be instinct with this quality. Character is the art of the eternal. Nature is forever striving towards beautiful form. There is neither discord or puerility in countryside or city street, but mistaken human theory has had a hand in it. These villages, set in the green crevices of the Wiltshire Downs, are all beautiful because they have been built instinctively. Not a stone has been laid upon another, not a beam set in place, but it has followed some impervious condition of wind and weather. And there is no other source of true inhabitable beauty. And what? There is no other source of true inhabitable beauty. Architects should be humble-minded folk, for their whole bent nowadays is a tacit acknowledgement of past transgression, a harking back to aboriginal forms upheld by sun and wind and rain, the only true house builders. I suppose what he's saying is that, I mean, a bit like I said the other day about fashions and things, that we come to a point where everybody's harking back and doing it in the vein of, and nobody can invent anything new. And I suppose what he means is that these types of buildings that were used with local materials just looks right, and it's something that Alec, what's his name? Alec. He did a TV series. He was an architect, and he did a TV series and a critic. Alec, what's his name? A double-barreled name, and it was six English towns, another 6 English towns, and a further 6 English towns. I've got his books, and he was one of these old duffers when he was doing it in the 70s. These TV programs, and he wrote this amazing book, which I have, called A Pattern of English Building, by Alec. I can't remember his sodding name. Anyway, and his whole point was about aesthetics, and it's using local materials in local places, which is why the Cotswolds look so amazing, because it's Cotswold stone in the Cotswold environment, and if you put them in the wrong place, they just look absolutely wrong. And I think this is what he's saying. I saw very little of the Gypsy during our ride. All his time was taken up in attending to his business, and mine in looking about me. But as we were nearing Heytesbury, he left his seat on the shafts to walk beside the van, and I got down to bear him company. He was in an unexpected silent mood. For some time we trudged on together without a word, until, casting about at random for a subject of talk, I happened to hit upon the very motive of his depression. "What was the matter with the old man at the last cottage?" I asked him, "and why was he so angry with the organ grinder?" Not a sort of ordinary question you ask somebody these days, is it? The Gypsy came out of his dumb mood with a start. He stopped and looked back down the lane, listening. Plate Rack went ahead with his... Oh, yes, Plate Rack is the horse. I forgot that. Plate Rack went ahead with his tintinabulant cargo. You try saying that with a few gins inside you. Tintinabulant. What a lovely word. Tintinabulant. With his tintinabulant cargo. Hark! He's playing again. The fool. The damn fool. I imagine that D is short for damn, because they put a D, big long dash, as if to say we can't print the word. And damn back then may have been too strong a word to put into a book. The damn fool. These young furriers, there ain't a bit of understanding among them. Now, if I was the old gaffer, I'd give him something. I'd learn him. He spoke with such vehemence that I turned to him with a quick look of wonder. His pouchy eyes were brimming with tears. "Gives another fill," he said savagely, striking on. "Why, 'tis like this here, sir. The old man, he had a sick wife, terrible bad she was, and helpless like. For years and years she could do nowt but lie abed. Well now, the old man, he was very fond of her, and just to cheer her up, you see, he used to get the organ grinder chap to play under her windy. But now she's been dead these 6 weeks, and that blam silly organ man, he can't be got to see as no one wants to hear the music no more. All the folks tells him to keep away from the house, but 'tis no use. He can't understand no natural language. Every Wednesday morning there he be, cutting the old gaffer's heart open again, just as the folk had got round him a bit. Aye, I'd give him music, something with a pitchfork, and he'd very soon learn the meaning of." He'd caught up with the van now, and had almost reached Heytesbury, where the Gypsy and I were to part company. He'd gone back to his silent mood, but at the junction of the roads, he found his tongue again. He beckoned me mysteriously to the door of the van. "Look'ee, I want a word with 'ee," he said awkwardly, as he led me inside. The caravan was wonderfully fitted up. There were 2 sleeping berths, as in a ship's cabin, 1 on each side, the bed linen spotlessly clean. Under these were lockers with polished brass handles. The little windows had muslin blinds tied back with a ribbon. A linnet swung in a cage overhead. The Gypsy stared about him for a moment, sheepishly, rubbing his stubby chin with the palm of his hand. Then he dived into one of the lockers and brought out an ancient concertina. "Look'ee," he said again under his breath. You'd seen me blubbing like. Well, 'tweren't that the old man's trouble that made me take on so. You see, my missus, she were very fond of music too, but lor, that was so long ago, and I ain't dared touch it since." "Oh, the concertina," I say. "Oh, I see what he's saying. He used to play this concertina, and his wife used to love it, and then she died, and now he can't play it. I get it." Heytesbury, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, I found was a long straggling village of old houses threaded on the great main road between Warminster and Salisbury, and in itself as silent as the grave. Every minute or two a motor came screaming through, but between these bursts of flying uproar I could detect hardly a sound but the sighing of the wind in the trees. This swiftly alternating hubbub and stagnation had a peculiarly disquieting effect, and I made haste to get clear of the place, turning off into the by-lanes once more, about a mile beyond the village. He's very sensitive, isn't he, old Tickner? He's also said that, where was it? That was in that other place where he said it had a strange feeling and he couldn't bear it. Oh, the Ilchester, wasn't it? When he was looking at the prison, he couldn't bear it. He's a very sensitive soul. Alec Clifton Taylor, Linda Kane, you are a gem, and Lee Lawson. Alec Clifton Taylor, yes, lovely bloke. I mean, I know I called him an old duffer a few minutes ago, but that's how he came over. But such a sensible and interesting man, a man that I would like to have had a nice long cup of tea with and a chat about architecture. Not that I know enough. So there. Julia says, I played Tintabula in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, an Amdram production in Portsmouth a few years back. Random fact, LOL. And Justin Joe says, I used to live in Portsmouth. So, it's such a small world, isn't it? Wasn't the Gypsy charming for half an hour, says Audrey Forbes Hamilton. Laura, I'm reading it but saying different words. Lee Lawson says, I'm here now. And Nigel Sadler reports that the Sussex Peep Show copy that Linda sent has arrived to him, so he can finish off the map. Fantastic. And Days of Yours says, Herge's Adventures of Tintabula, The Crab with the Golden Claw, Part 1, Tintabula Wins the Day. Do you remember those, Herge's Adventures of Tintin? It was just like title after title after title. When would it actually start? Mark Donny McLeod says, Hastesbury has been through there a few times as a boy when we lived in Devizes. Hastesbury, is that how it's pronounced? Hastesbury, yeah, could well be. Thank you for the thing. Diana Rolfe, hello to you, by the way. Steve G, good afternoon. Phew, I hope I'm keeping up with everything. Right. I chose my road quite at random, as I thought, but before the day was out, I found myself blessing the invisible, kindly elf, who, I was soon to discover, must have guided me hither. Downland country is full of surprises, and that afternoon's wandering route had its surprises at every turn. The sky had cleared, the larks had charmed away the gloom with their indefatigable singing. Now the sun had full charge of the world again, and was in his brightest fettle, when I stumbled upon the little river Wylye and the old road. Wylye was but the merest trickle of quiet water, fringed with pollard willow and ash, and the road but a narrow way, almost obliterated here and there by the dense, crowding trees. Years ago, the two must have been of some importance in the land, for the one still flowed by ruined mills and over dismantled weirs, and the other linked up half a dozen villages, deep in an internal slumber now, yet once probably teeming with busy life. But the new road had been made a little to the northward, and the traffic now, a tide of traffic now diverted. For how great a length of time the process had been going on I have no means of guessing, but road and river, as I lit upon and kept with them all that sunny autumn afternoon, were about equally far gone in green deceptitude. The river mused along through its choked, weedy channel at so gentle a gait that you could hardly detect a ripple, and the road was so hemmed in by the trees and overhanging hedgerows, and so thickly strewn with fallen leaves, that sometimes, for 100 yards together, not an inch of its white surface was to be seen. You waded ankle-deep in rustling gold and purple, now smouldering fiercely in the sunbeams, now plunged in the chill blue gloom of unending woods. The bare hills closed in to the right and left. At every gap I got a view of them, either a single steep wall filling the whole arc of sight, or curve beyond curve, huddling like folded sheep to the horizon. But the Wylye Valley was all an orgy of rich growth and colour, dreaming shadow, dazzling light. Upton, Lovell, Codford, Sheringham, Stockton, Wylye village itself. From one little nook of oblivion to the other, I wandered at a pace more deliberate even than that of the water by my side. Every yard of the way had its own blithe singer. Indeed, the birds seemed to have the lanes and the village streets entirely to themselves, for I met no more than half a dozen people all afternoon. In Upton Lovell, a pair of foxhound pups came gambling about me as if they'd seen no human creature for days. In Sherrington, I saw one face at a window, and farther on, a man and a woman misdirect me, though with much voluble goodwill. Even when, at sunset, I reached the inn at Stockton, I saw no one but the landlord, who brought me provender into the little silent tap-room at once beat a retreat. There I sat eating in solitude, the while the landlord, that's an interesting turn of phrase, the while the landlord in his invisible fastness whistled a slow, mournful tune without a break. And he was still whistling, a voice and nothing more, when I left the inn and took up the thread of my journey again. Throughout the whole afternoon I met only 3 vehicles. One of them was a baker's cart going the opposite way, and therefore useless to me. In both of the others I might have ridden, had I chosen, but in each case an obstacle presented itself. The first was a common rough field cart. It turned into the lane behind me, and I waited for it to come up, rather liking the look of the patriarchal old man who drove it, though the cart was clotted over, inches thick, in mire. But I let it go by. I was ready to claim the traveller's prerogative from Thomas Mangold Codford or John Wurzel Wiley, but the legend on this cart struck me dumb for the moment. The Right Reverend the Lord Bishop of Worcester, Stockton, Wilts. I drew back into the hedgerow and all but clawed off my cap. As the cart rumbled off, I even found myself seriously considering whether that was only a lesser dignitary driving, or whether it was the Lord Bishop himself. I'm not reading terribly well tonight. I'm so sorry about that. I said tonight. It's so dark outside. It is actually only afternoon. The third vehicle was a pony chaise, a wide, low, old-fashioned chaise with a mouse-coloured pony in its yellow shafts. The pony had a bell to its collar. But for this, I should have heard nothing of its approach behind me over the thick carpet of fallen leaves. As it happened, I caught the first far-off tinkle of the bell, and turning, watched the chaise as it came down the long, sun-barred avenue between the oak wood and the willows of the Wiley. But by that time the wind had died down to the merest breath, and the earth had temporarily regained the warm touch of summer. I was hot and tired, or at least lazy. The front seat in the chaise was vacant. I could have taken it with all the pleasure in life, but one glance at the young couple who sat on the rear seat stopped me on the eve of a blunder. The girl was driving, a pretty girl with a rosy child's face and flaxen curls under a black mushroom hat, and I decided that she had just fetched the boy, or rather youth, from the railway station. She was the parson's daughter, without a doubt, and he, possibly a cousin, but certainly going to be a sweetheart before long. I made out that they had not seen each other for years, and that this drive home to the vicarage together was, for both, a mingled revelation. Sorry, I'm just reading really awfully. I made out they'd not seen each other for years, and that this drive home to the vicarage together was for both a mingled revelation, delight and embarrassment. With flushed, joyous faces, they were dipping eagerly into this, their earliest feast of life, like chicken at a basket of cherries. All this I found out in a few seconds that the chaise took to amble by, and when they had passed I trudged on at a decent interval in their rear, noting how the toadstool hat and the white Panama leaned together continually, and already deep in a conjecture of their history for the years to come. But a little way onward, the chase stopped. Both young faces looked back, and I guessed what was going to happen. The whispered consultation ceased as I came up. With a courtesy that he must have inherited from his great-grandfather at the very latest, the boy got out of the chaise and asked whether they could help me on the road. I had my excuses worded and ready for him, but they could not resist a moment's hesitancy in reply. There, before my eyes, was the prettiest conflict between duty and inclination. The last thing in the world they wanted just then was a third in their company. Each looked at me as though life itself depended on what I was going to say. But I set them free at last, and the look of glad relief on both young faces as they drove off again was a pleasure that stayed with me for many miles after that. And that was the end of that particular chapter, so that was good. We are on chapter 12. Alec Clifton Taylor has a memorial garden in Kensington. Does he? Is that where he's buried then, presumably, when you say a memorial garden? Oh, Tony Smith suggests, hello Tony Smith, Pevsner. Pevsner he's an interesting, Nicholas Pevsner. Interesting bloke, but he not as charming. Well, you don't really get to know his personality at all from his books, although they're very useful. Whereas Alec Clifton Taylor, you got to know him in the TV series a bit, and he comes across in his writing, I think, as a maths enthusiast. So this is chapter 12. Wiley Village I had passed in the hushed steel-grey hour that comes between the day and night. Lights were blinking drowsily in some of the cottage windows. I was sorely tempted to end my day's travel there and try a little of the doorstep diplomacy that, so far, had yielded me with such snug installing. But something in the pureness of the air, a kind of serene asceticism, kept my feet moving onward, almost against my will. After a little while, I came out upon the main road again, still in the same divided frame of mind. Here there were 4 crossroads. I stood at their juncture while the twilight deepened swiftly overhead. Everything about me was indescribably mute and still. The great planets were bright in the sky. The stars were not yet. Low down in the east, an opalescent blur showed where the moon would be rising. An opalescent. How do you pronounce that? It's spelt opalescent, but an opalescent? Is that right? Opalescent? Have I got that right? An odd sort of querying mood seized upon me. Leaning on the fence by the roadside, I seemed to be changing into a human note of interrogation, something short of 6 foot high. Where was I going? And what lay before me on that steady, buoyant, pure-souled night? 2 questions alternated in my mind as regularly as the backward and forward swings of a pendulum. And at about the 50th swing, perhaps an hour later, the answer came rumbling up from candle-twinkling Wiley. Only a little ways onto the plain. What? Only a little ways onto the plain, said the driver from the dusky depths of this wagon tilt. But you're very welcome as far as it goes. Where the hell did that? He didn't... What? I don't understand. He just introduced a character who seems to have sneaked up to him. I seem to be changed into a note of interrogation. Where was I going? Blah, blah, blah. Yep. I climbed up beside him. In the roadside nettles a white stone glimmered by. "What does that say? What does that say?" I asked. "That? 9 miles to Amesbury. 9 of the longest, loneliest miles in the country, I reckon. 'Tis straight over Salisbury Plain and past the stones. But you bain't going there this time of night." Stonehenge! It was thither my steps had been turning all the day then, and I had never guessed it. All my life I'd wanted to go to Stonehenge, but something had always prevented me, and now it seemed I was really going, and going at night. A short mile further on, but every inch laborious collar work for the team, the wagon reached its destination, a little farmstead tucked in the corner of the hills. It lumbered off to the cart house, and, left alone on the road, I took a survey of the country around me with the eye of a ship's captain driven into unknown seas. The moon was up now. With a face like pale red, glowing iron, it peered over the hilltop to my right and revealed to me the most desolate scene I have ever chanced upon. I had left the last of the trees far below the Wylye valley, and now there was visible not even the sparest wayside shrub. The long swelling curves of the hills rose on every hand, utterly bare to their summits, and up through the midst of them climbed the naked chalky track, like a beam of clearer moonlight, straight ahead into the grey darkness, as though it led into the sky. There was no wind here by the roadside, but every hill crest far above me seemed like a lute string stretched from star to star, on which the wandering night air thrummed continually. Hard by the farmhouse stood a small cottage, and by the garden gate I made out a tiny red spark. Going towards it, I found a labourer leaning there, enjoying a quiet pipe. He seemed much astonished to see a stranger in his Highland desert at such a time, and still more amazed at the question I put to him. "Stonehenge? Why, 'tis miles and miles! I wouldn't go there myself tonight. No, not for a golden sovereign. Lo, you've a fine lonesome road afore you, and make no mistake." This put an idea into my head. Walking sticks are always an impediment in real walking, and I never carried one. But for a night tramp over Salisbury Plain, a bit of a cudgel might not go amiss. I consulted the man at the gate, and he furnished me with a stout hurdle stake about 4 foot long, savagely pointed at one end. This provided with a tool that was both weapon and alpenstock combined, so I set out for my long walk. It is difficult to convey any real idea of that night's experience. Vast uninhabited spaces of earth are conventionally supposed, even in daylight, to strike the traveller with awe at their immensity and their solitude, to overwhelm him with a sense of his own littleness and unimportance in the creative scheme. And at night, these popularly accredited qualities are supposed to augment 100-fold. But when I had left the farm behind me and was fairly swallowed up by that inimitable moon-flood waste of hills, I did not find a spirit of loneliness gaining on me, nor was I borne down with any feeling of personal insignificance. Rather, I found myself exalted into the position of chief mummer in a pageant that had the whole universe for its staging. Alone of all human beings that night, I was privileged to act a part in the bright world company of moons and stars. Just have a quick look at some of the messages coming in as we do. Opalescent says, thank you, Opalescent. Thank you very much for that. Opalescent. Opal fruits meant to make your mouth water. I have been to Stonehenge. Couldn't see why they are so visited. Yes, me too. Very odd. Miss Sum had to answer the door. Oh, poor old Linda Kane. Who was at the door? We want to know. Who's been banging on it? Was it the Mormons? Herded on buses, then forced to exit via the gift shop. Yes, not so much fun down at Stonehenge anymore. Stonehenge was lovely when I was a teenager, quiet, and you were able to walk among the stones. Graham Cass, hello to you. Only ever viewed them from the 303. Ah, yes, the good old A303. That's how it should be, Lee, says Turbo Stream. Yeah, we should be able to wander, but they are. So, I mean, you can imagine thousands and thousands of people. But then you've got to imagine when Stonehenge was built, presumably thousands and thousands of people had already been, by the time it was rediscovered, thousands and thousands. I mean, we'd had thousands of years. People must have been there in their droves touching those stones. Surely they would still survive. Too much damage being done. Excuse me. Somebody with a pile full of shoe boxes to wrap up for Christmas. Oh, that was the person at the door. Somebody with a pile of shoe boxes to wrap up for Christmas. Are they like doing door-to-door sales or something? We will continue. Right in the heart of the plain, in a little tree-cumbered hollow, lies the village of Winterbourne. At about the 5th mile, the road took a sudden downward dip. Thick, interlacing foliage made an unexpected darkness around me. Then, upon this sombre scene, as from a magic lantern, was thrown a picture of lighted cottages, and in their midst, an inn. Here I took the precaution to stuff my pockets with bread and cheese. 10 minutes later, I was trudging over the moonlit plain once more, and looking back, lo! All sign of the dell and everything it contained had vanished. But for my bulging pockets, I could have believed that the whole thing, the swift descent into Winterbourne, its bevy of lights and pleasant human talk and faces, had only been a wayside dream. I now began to look about me for Stonehenge. Hitherto the sky had been without a cloud, but now a succession of dark forms came sailing over the face of the moon, so that for minutes together the way was plunged in almost complete darkness. At these times it was impossible to see a dozen yards ahead. In one of the longest and profoundest periods of obscurity, I even missed the road altogether, and discovering myself floundering on a bare hillside, I was constrained to pull up and wait until the returning moonlight should again disclose the way. Thus I went on for what seemed an interminable time. At last, when the light had been blotted out for half a mile or so, and I was beginning to fear that I had missed what I had sought altogether, I came suddenly upon it. The moon broke out with a dazzling brilliance, and there, within a stone's throw of me, lay the vast, ruined circle of the visitor's centre. No, sorry, not the visitor's centre. Wasn't a visitor's centre. There, the whole vast ruined circle. Sorry, I just ruined that whole little moment, didn't I? The man charged me $10 to get in and took me round with a little electric light. Gee, it's so good to sit... No, I'm making it up. The moon broke, and with a dazzling brilliance, and there, within a stone's throw of me, lay the vast, ruined circle of Stonehenge. If it had sprung out of the bare ground before my gaze, or had been let down miraculously from heaven on cables of moonshine, I doubt if I could have been more entirely dumbfounded than I was at that moment. Volumes, I suppose, could be filled with the recorded thoughts and impressions of various travellers on their first view of Stonehenge, unless they're turbostream. I can only think that these emotional pilgrims must have been of another clay to myself, or come letter perfect in ready-made idolatries. For my part, I could only stare at the thing, lost in unformulated wonder at its strength, its massiveness, its rugged, ruthless grandeur. Snow white in the moonshine, beautiful with a beauty that was all lawlessness and primeval savagery, well nigh terrifying in its silent revelation of human power and purpose 500,000 years ago. It drew me like a basilisk, stumbling over the intervening ground until I was brought up against a high wire fence as a bird caught in a snare. But I was over this twanging obstruction in a moment. The next moment I'd passed under one of the mighty trioliths and had hushed my footfall on the velvety sward within, close to the great sacrificial stone. A voice rang out in the darkness, and I turned sharply to see the man from the National Trust saying, "Oi, get out, you swine! What are you doing here? You can't come blundering your way in here in the middle of the night. I'll have to have you taken the wind." Sorry, I made that up as well. There was no shout ringing in the night. A shout rang out in the night, and the man from the National... No, I'm making that up. Stop it. I couldn't help myself. Sorry, I've just ruined your reading. I've ruined it for you. Oh, one's got to have a little bit of fun. There are rare seasons in most men's lives when the veil, I had in the pub, when the veil that divides the seen from the unseen, the corporeal, from the ethereal, seems to refine away to such an attenuity that eyes and ears alone cannot be trusted to keep the boundary unpassed. My long solitary walk had perhaps a little unnerved me. Though I bore a full haversack, I had fasted for 6 or 7 hours. The almost instinctive habit of old smokers to fill and fill again when much preoccupied may have had something to do with it. Oh, I see. But be this as it may, I had no sooner got within the shadow of the place when a fluttering conviction seized me that I was not alone. It was no mere sensation from a vague form lurking somewhere behind the pillars of the vast ruin. I felt myself one of a crowd, one of a great concourse of people, densely packed together and swaying with an intense excitement, a single unmarked unit in the multitude, looking on at some nameless, fearful rite. All I had ever read of the Druids, of their terrible lordship over the race, their human sacrifices, their fantastic harlotry of religion, came welling up in my mind. I strode to and fro in the moon-barred space, with arms outstretched. I knelt by that black, evil-looking stone, black as it well might be, with the blood that had been shed on it, and felt it. And, oh, I see what he's saying, sorry. I knelt by the black, evil-looking stone, black as well it might be with the blood that had been shed on it, and felt it over, assuring myself that there was nothing on it but light and dew. Else I must have believed my outer senses, that I was indeed held and pressed by the surging multitude, that the white robes of the sun-priests were indeed flickering before me, that in very truth there was a wild chant upon the air, that gibbering lament from the slaughter stone, that final flash of the descending sacrificial knife. It was all over in a moment. The mood passed. I was myself again, a little unsteady and overstrained, but indubitably the 20th century wayfarer once more, and now, as indubitably, almost prosaically alone. I sat for a while, how long I will never know, on one of the fallen columns, thinking it over and watching the moonshine as it slowly journeyed past my feet. And then, on the still air, there was borne to me the sound of chiming bells. I started up and listened. It was infinitely remote, but every note wonderfully distinct and clear. The bells were playing a quaint old hymn tune, and playing it ill. One bell missed altogether, and one hurried, tripping over the next. At the end, I could even make out a faint, throbbing discord as all the bells settled down to silence together. Then came a single deep note, chiming the hour. I counted up to 9, but to my amazement, the sound went on farther. 10, 11, 12, it was midnight. And here was I, drowsing in the midst of Salisbury Plain, with never a thought yet of where I was to lie that night. I hurried off at a good pace in that direction, as I thought the chimes, guessing they rang from Amesbury. In this latter I was right, for on the morrow I stood by the church and heard over again some halting, imperfect performance. But something had gone awry with my sense of direction. That queer night's walk was destined to have an uncommon ending. Instead of drawing nearer the roofs of Amesbury and the Song of Avon, my steps led me deeper and deeper into the wilderness. At length, just as I was nearing a dark clump of pines, of which now there were several in the landscape, the moonlight soused out permanently behind a thick blank of cloud, and I was constrained to admit that I had lost my way. It was an unholy situation. I was tired to death with my long tramp, and still more tired of solitude and darkness. I had no idea where I was, and it seemed equally fertile to go back or forward. 2 courses only remained to me. The first, to wait until the clock struck again, when I might try and guide myself by the sound, at best but a forlorn hope. The second was to make for a pine clump, and there extemporise a night's lodging. I chose the latter, and carefully singling out the blackest part of the night as its probable direction, began to grope my way over the dew-soaked grass. As the event turned out, I passed one of the most comfortable nights in my memory. Luck is a most distracting thorn in the side of the logician, and mine would have pricked venomously then had there been one of the breed nearby. I had hardly got under the sighing lee of the wood when I made out against its back wall something long, low, and square. Drawing nearer, this revealed itself as an old railway carriage, bereft of its wheels, and used, I soon joyfully discovered, as a receptacle for cattle fodder. I struck a match and peered in. All the interior divisions had been removed, and all the doors nailed up but the one at which I stood. A great heap of hay lay at one end, fit for the couch of a king. I thanked God fervently, barred up the door, ate my bread and cheese in the darkness, for I could not be forever striking matches, then burrowed up to my neck in the hay, and slept like a dead man all night. There endeth chapter whatever it was. We're now on chapter, the next one, 13. And we will leave it there, chapter 30. You can't leave him there, Mr. Derrick. I'm afraid we can. He's in a defunct railway carriage. What about that? Corporeal, not corporal, as in corporal punishment. That would be so impressed if he had £15 to see the Stones now, older than I thought. Get a grip, Richard, says Lee Lawson. Sorry, I'm trying to. I did. 50 people watching. Thank you very much to those lovely 50 people, Justin Jones. Ed, 15 quid. So glad I got in for free. Doodle Spark Cleaning. Hello to you. Very nice to see you. Only 22. Come on, folks. Oh, 22 thumbs up. Thank you very much for the thumbs up. It was the first Fum Serpera. Oh, I was the first Fum Serupper. I got it. Sorry, just struggling here. I hope the lovely Joseph is doing well, says Christian Soldier. Come in, number 24. Your time is up. I am not a number. I am a barcode, says Michael White. I thought it was going to be a Strike Spooky 13. Says Lee. Edward Moulding. Fargo Plantation, ? He should have headed to Kiwi Hill. There is a photo of the railway carriage in my copy of the book. Oh, is there? There's no photos in this. He had. Oh, you must send me a. Take a snap of the picture with your phone and send it to me, because we'll show it tomorrow. Because presumably he wakes up there. That would be great. Is there more photos in your book? I have no photos at all. You're not supposed to have that book. That one was for me. You were going to send it to me, and now you're keeping it for you. It's not fair. Anyway, Mark Donny McLeod says, I have a faint recollection of being in a van with a funky smell and a bunch of hippies and some chaps called something playing music all night long on the sunrise of midsummer. Like, wow, man. Doodle Spark Cleaning. Hi, Richard. Hello to you. And Edward Moulding says, Linda, must be a first edition you have. Yes, it's a first edition. She's keeping it. It's not fair. It's not fair. Me and my passion for my books. And Simon Cooper, hello from Simon in Cumbria. Nice to see you. Well, thank you very much. Look at that. More people have come. Well, we've come to the end of this reading. Live Luck on Southern Roads. We do this every day. By the way, if you're new to this and you've not joined me before, we do this every day at 4 o'clock, weekdays. And we do the Vobes Show on the Vobes Show channel at 8 o'clock, weekdays, every day this week. Yes, says Linda Kane, for a few photos, but mostly a bit general. I want to see a picture of the railway carriage, Linda. Take a picture with your phone, send it to us. It'll be lovely, and we will continue our story. We are, we're over halfway now. So that's chapter 13 tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Sounds great, doesn't it? And look at that. We've finished within the hour. The next chapter will involve Walking in the Hay, Amesbury, The Song of the Avon, River Philosophy, Choosing a Good Inn, The Sick Canary, On the Andover Road, and The Policeman's Story. Books coming up to read is Neighbourhood by Tickner Edwards, and this one, On Southern English Roads by... Who is this by? I'll tell you who this is by when I can find it. Burpham Ferry. Have a look at this. This is Burpham Ferry. I've got to go back to Burpham to see if we can find the ferry. Burpham's only up the road, those people who don't know the area. Sorry, I'm going to tell you who it's by, but let's have a quick look at this. Look. That is the blurred... Oh, no, it's more in focus now. Burpham Ferry. See the church? Must be a way down to the ferry to the Arun. How about that? I didn't know there was a little berth. I mean, but by ferry, it's a little rowing boat where somebody obviously just sits down there and allows people to cut across. But that's fascinating. This was written in the 1890s, so this will be very good. And it's written by somebody called J.J. Hissey. But what is his name? His full name is James John Hissey, author of On the box seat, across England in a dog cart, a holiday on the road, and through 10 English counties, etc. 1896. I like that. What was that other one called? Across England in a dog cart. Got to buy that one. Got to get that. So these sound amazing, don't they? I'm forever going to be reading these sort of books. Absolutely love them. Up the Leg of Her Drawers. I'm sorry, just suddenly caught my eye. It's by John James Hissey. Thank you very much, Justine Jones. That's brilliant. Mum used to spend happy days with the family who had a summer house on the riverbank before the war. There was a similar ferry on the River Severn at Hampton Load, says Turbo Stream. Just closed the curtains, blacker than a coal hut now. Yeah, I bet it is. It looks black out there. Hissy fit. We will have a hissy fit. Hawkwind was then Hawkwind, and some bloke called Gong, or going something spacey music. Mark Donny McLeod's in a world of his own sometimes. Anyway, there we go. We'll be back again tomorrow. Got to set up for the Vobes show next, like the Essie, and get myself all ready. Thank you for that. Thoroughly enjoyed our reading today, although some bits of it I read a bit crap, but we're getting there. Until next time, take care. Thank you for joining me. And arrivederci. Goodbye. Goodbye.